Welcome back, everyone, to the LEC Spring Playoffs. Norskeren has to take a lot to carry a lot of people on his back. That's why we showed that. And then here's Juke and, of course, also SK. Both teams are contemplative, I think. They have a lot to think about because for Splyce, they are on match point, but it has by no means been a straightforward line, I think, into that fourth game. For SK, on the other hand, after a very strong start, now they fall down and they really need to claw back from the jaws of defeat. So I think there's a lot to talk about, but let's start with Splyce and the good things we've seen, because that is the team on match point. And something you pointed out, Deficio, is that you think they're coming in with fresh ideas, with drafts that have creative opportunities for their game.
Yeah, I normally think like Splyce as a team, if you look back to the last couple of years, have never been famous for being super creative and crazy in their drafts. Only Xerxe in the jungle has kind of done that. But now we saw game one with some flex picks, or we got jungle coming in. Now Velka's bot lane from Kobbe. Like, this guy normally does not play mages. So the fact that he's pulling it out is very interesting. Also, Xerxe finding more carries he can play. This actually meant that we got a completely different setup compared to the last two games.
It's also a completely different setup for Splyce in general. The fact of the matter is that Splyce just smashed a team. And I'm not gonna, okay, I'll pull back on Smash. Splyce won a game on a mid-game power spike composition. You know, this was about the two items. It was about having your Jace, rotating them around, and using Vizicsacsi. So it's carrying through a different lane that isn't Kobbe, carrying through someone else that isn't jungle, and then making good on a quick game.
And I also think that's important to highlight because it was all about Kobbe coming into this one, but we've seen several people step up during the series, and I think Vizicsacsi, after not the best game one, definitely put himself back on there with the great cannon play and with the great Jace play in games 2 and 3.
And it's so important that he's actually able to do these kind of things because you need that flexibility in draft where you don't just have to pick like one or two champions only top side or something where he just goes even and then you play only bot lane. Like, the fact he's actually able to do this now on Jace makes it really difficult for SK, because I think this game, game 3, was like very meta-defining for the series itself, because now Splyce showed we can actually draft for late or early mid-game, we can actually get an advantage, take all the turrets on the side, and then we can close out the game.
So
also
actually,
thanks to SK.
It was confusing for SK because you say meta-defining, but if I'm SK, now I don't know what to do, because first I thought I was going to go late and that was going to be it for Splyce. Now you see that they can also pick a mid-game composition and win. So I think Splyce has done a really good job of showcasing different strategies to throw SK's prep probably off going into game 4.
Yeah, my only question now is the fact that Splyce have had to reach so far into the bag of tricks. Like, they're showing all of these new things.
Have they?
That's great because we expect them to be heavy prepped.
How big is the bag of tricks?
I don't know if you get to do the same thing every single time where you pull like a Vel'Koz. Like, Fnatic are just sitting back, and I think who feels the best about this series is Fnatic, because they love team fighting and they're watching all of these team fights happening. Yes, there's these crazy plays, but there's also a lot of mistakes happening, and Splyce are showing a lot of their cards.
Luckily, you don't have to worry about Fnatic for another week. It's all about this game right now. And again, if you are Splyce, you've shown the different styles that you're playing. I think SK Gaming also, to me, really highlighted that when they were under pressure in a very important game, they were lacking leadership. They were lacking discipline, because when they actually decide to rush for this Baron, which is kind of the crucial moment and crucial thing for Splyce to get the Baron, and then they can close out the game before we go full late. This, to me, is like you're in a losing position as SK, and you decide to say, let's try and all-in, let's YOLO it, you know? Let's not try and just hold on and defend, because they panic when they see Xerxe is killing the inhib. And they feel, how do we get this top laner to go to Baron so that he doesn't kill inhib? Well, we start the Baron. But the moment you start the Baron, it's instant lost. It's like 100% lost.
There is absolutely no reason to do this. You have double Infernal, you have a Zero Jinx. That game goes on 10, 15 minutes longer, and it's going to be an auto win for you. So SK, they had their opportunity, and they just hard fumble.
Yeah, I think when you look at it then in the context of the 3 games we've seen already, it's, to me, that first game was kind of anyone's game. SK Gaming took it. There were a lot of mistakes on both sides, but I think Splyce has actually grown throughout the series much more than SK has adapted throughout the series so far. Is that correct?
I think that's fair to say. SK obviously won the first game. Then we had the super close game too, and now they show this lack of, again, discipline to actually try and keep stalling when they were really under pressure. And the fact that Splyce picked early game, played well in the mid game, first time I think we've seen that. almost the entire split. Like, this was the best mid game we've seen from Splyce in 10 weeks, and that's a great sign from them in this specific series.
I agree. They've really stepped up and risen to the occasion, but it isn't over yet. And I want to bring it back to something we mentioned previous game as well. It would be huge for SK if they're able to close it out, but we can't forget that it would be unthinkable for Splyce to drop out. So we'll see if they can close it out in this final game, but I do want to then put it on in the heads of SK. What do they have to do? Selfmade has been having good games. He's not been, he's not having bad games. Splyce has been able to slow him down, but he's still playing his game. He's had some clutch moments. I really don't know where to go for SK.
I mean, the key thing there is they've been able to slow him down. Selfmade still isn't making the same impact that we saw and really praised him for during the regular split, where he's all over, making all of these successful ganks. And until they actually break that, I think that's what's inhibiting a lot of SK's momentum and success.
I would like to see SK try and draft for at least one winning lane. In this case, with Jarvan versus the Jace and Rek'Sai, it was very difficult to do something top. Bot lane against Vel'Koz, obviously, smart pick from Splyce, made it hard to do anything there. So I really want to see in the draft one powerful lane that they can focus towards, so they actually get a more even early game. And then as long as the teams follow each other, I think it's a very, very close game still that SK can win, but they can't afford to fall behind like here, because Splyce just proved they can actually play mid-game and finish.
Yeah, that is true. It is do or die for SK. Let's see if they can take us to that game 5.
Thank you very much, Sjokz. Game 5, the only way SK survive in this series. They have to take down Splyce, who looked absolutely impeccable, you have to say, in Game 3.
Good draft. I very much liked it. And I think we are seeing the potential of Splyce. What's fascinating is, as we predicted, SK will be on the blue side in this game. And I think that's the better position for them to be in. I think Splyce having counterpick hasn't really proven to be that valuable. And the fact that you can force Splyce into what seems to be bans directed to things like Sylas, they then have to ban away the Lissandra, and they like to ban away the LeBlanc as well, or at least that's what they did in Game 2. I think it just gives SK a little bit more freedom to play how they want and set themselves up for success.
Exactly, and I think you pointed out the Lissandra is the most important pick to me, because I think Lissandra helps just so much to neutralize lanes, to collapse on sides and make plays happen. So on blue side, you either force that ban or you snap grab that for yourself. You might just be seeing a return to the Game 1, Game 2. These teams knew their prep coming in. I don't think, even though we've seen some unique picks happen, that it's going to change much.
It is not so far, right? As Karthus banned away, Lissandra and Sylas taken away by Splyce. Final ban available for SK. We have seen them go towards things like the Rakan, like the Morgana. A lot of different options for them here.
Looking at what options they could go for now. SK, they did ban away Morg, as you identified. Interesting, they're going to go the direction of Thresh. I'm trying to think of what picks are really good that Thresh deals with. Maybe a range support is something that they're thinking of. Maybe Galio is something they want to put some priority on. Maybe they want to put some of the focus on Tahm Kench themselves is another option as well.
Yeah, it surprises me because we've seen a lot of the Rakan so far in this series, especially from Splyce over on the red side. So banning away a support that's not that champion comes out of nowhere.
Rakan is actually relatively bad into Thresh as well, so maybe SK will look towards that Rakan, but the Galio, as you said, Vedius, is the first pick here by SK. Still a flex pick, of course, but Dreams has played it pretty well this series, and Thresh is a known counter to the Colossus.
So I'm looking at now kind of priority for Splyce. I think Jarvan is a very safe pick. I don't think I want to see them put value on Xayah like they have done in this series. I think that instead, I'm trying to think, do they try and focus on just getting a strong support right now? Something like the Braum could be a good answer if they want to try and just guarantee a strong bot side, and then they can flex the Jarvan wherever they want.
I mean, honestly, I sort of like the Xayah Rakan right here pairing up with Jarvan for a very strong team fight, if anything.
Into a Galio, though?
Into a Galio, it can be a little bit difficult, but Xayah with the self-peel can help a lot against that hard engage. Instead, though, you called it, it's going to be the Braum down in the bottom lane for Norskeren. So looking more towards the style we saw in the last game, where it's very safe picks on the bottom side to play through their solo laners, and especially Vizicsacsi.
But Rek'Sai stays up and available.
I was gonna say the Rek'Sai, and then he locked it in instantly, which leads me to believe now they just lock in their mid laner if they want to. But instead they're just gonna go for the confident pick with the Kalista.
Yeah, so this is a really strong 2v2 that we see a lot over in the LCK, where having the strong all-in of the Galio as well as the Kalista in the early levels is so good. Now, I'm honestly surprised that we see this Vayne, because I'm like, you know what? Pick an Ezreal or something could scale and sit back. Vayne is not necessarily that pick.
Yeah, but Kobbe is undefeated on the Vayne this split, 2-0. He is yet to be killed on the Vayne this split, 5-0-2 in his games. And who else to step up but the all-pro AD carry?
So what I quite like about the pick is the fact that it does outscale, and I think it's one of the few that can outtrade a Kalista. Not at super early levels, especially if we see one of those Hail of Blades Kalista, which is very lane dominant. But I do think that many AD carries consider it to be a very favorable matchup. And with the Braum and Jarvan, I feel like you've already got yourself a pretty well-rounded team comp with the side of Splyce. You have damage, you have engage, you have peel, you have a lot of utility, and they still have a lot of flexibility in their draft as well. Remember, while we don't expect it, Vayne can still be flexed to somewhere else, and there's always that threat along with the Jarvan between top and jump.
Yeah, and so my only question is whether or not they save counterpick for mid lane all the way last and reveal where this Jarvan is going to be going, or if they grab themselves a relatively safe mid lane or something like, I don't know, a Syndra perhaps could be relatively useful here for Humanoid.
We're looking at a primed Hecarim pick right now. With everything banned away, you would imagine, I feel like this is SK saying, you don't play it, so we will. And if you don't lock it in now, we're just going to lock it in, because like Poppy, Kennen, Vlad, Akali, these are all picks that are considered very, very good into that champion, and we know Werlyb likes to play it. So to me, this is a big shout. This is the champion SK is looking at.
There is the Syndra pick, though, and a great prediction on that one. Now, Vedius, we'll see if your Hecarim prediction does gallop its way into this pick and ban. SK maybe needs something out of that bag of tricks. Maybe need a few comfort picks to be able to take this victory against Splyce.
Well, right now, I think it might be a Hecarim over here for SK. We already see those summoner spells changed up. Ignite plus TP for Werlyb means this is almost surely going to be the Hecarim locked in here.
Good prediction, Vedius.
Thank you very much.
We're just smurfing.
We're smurfing. So can we get the last one is the honest
it's like
question.
as easy as solo queue.
So I'm wondering now, do they go for a hyper-aggressive mid lane? Like, I don't expect Pirean to play something like a Fizz. It's not usually his style of champion, so I think what else could you go into the Syndra? They could consider something like the Azir once again. I'm not a massive fan of it, but it is one option that they could go for. Depends how edgy they're feeling.
Not that edgy. Not a little bit of the dark side in the form of Morgana, but
super weird.
It's a safe mid laner at least. You can use your spell shield.
The problem is at early levels, because of the Q-Max on the side of Syndra, it's very easy to pop it. So that is assuming that the Morgana is mid lane. Remember, you could move her down towards bot. Morgana into Braum, especially Kalista Morgana, is actually a very high pressure lane where you can generate a lot of push. So we may see the Galio in the mid lane as an answer to the Syndra.
Now, seeing this Shen locked in for Vizicsacsi may come as a surprise. We don't see this champ all too often, but it did get some key buffs to trading with the damage on Q in the laning phase, and can generally be strong for setting up ganks and protecting a Vayne, a low-range AD carry in these later game team fights. I like a lot of the options that both of these teams have, both in laning strength as well as the team fight phase. It seems much more balanced than the other games we've seen so far today.
Shen, of course, did get buffed on 9.6 as well with the Q buffs, getting a little bit more damage coming out from that. And it is Chachi's most played across his career, if I'm reading these numbers right as well. So he is very, very comfortable on that champion in the top lane.
Unicorns of Love, when they had that really good year, I want to think it was in 2017, the year that he played with Xerxe, their Shen was one of the biggest picks for him alongside that jungler. And now, with one win away from moving on to round 2 in the LEC playoffs, is going to be bringing it back. So definitely a big pick. Really excited to see him back on the champion. Still a couple question marks for me around this Morgana in the mid lane against the Syndra. We'll see how it does. But what we can say for sure is Splyce, once again, do have a couple of lanes they can play around. Mid lane, maybe top lane. I don't know. It depends how early you can try and set up plays onto the Hecarim with a Shen. Meanwhile, for SK, I do think that with the Rek'Sai, you're kind of looking at that bot lane ender.
I believe we are going to hand it over to an interview. Laure standing by with Splyce's coach. Let's see what he has to say.
This is match point for you guys now, but what do you think about this draft from SK?
I think they went a bit all in on the early game, which is fine. They have a good draft for sure, like they want to snowball through bot, but if their first place fail, I think the game will be over. we kind of try to force them into a situation where in the last game they have to basically take aggressive moves, and after the last game that we did where we were super aggressive, we want them to force them to make a mistake. So if they make a mistake, we'll win the game.
All right, we'll see how it goes for you guys now. Let's dive back into the game. Casters, take it away.
Thank you very much, Laure. Some wise words there from Duke there for trying to force SK into the early game. That was their intention with the draft. And it seems to have worked out well because SK have a very strong early game team.
And I think it's important how he said that SK are looking to snowball through the bottom lane, because in this draft, Splyce gave themselves a lot of tools to defend from that. Not only do you have the Braum to stay alive, but you have the Vayne. I think Vayne is actually very good into Rek'Sai ganks, because the second he comes through a tunnel, especially if he's trying to flank you or come from behind, you can get immediately condemned into a wall. So that lane should be able to stay relatively safe in the 2 versus 2. And then as long as they survive until level 6, the Shen should make any plays around there very, very difficult.
It's the Hail of Blades Kalista as well, which is really cool. We saw Uzi playing it in the RNG versus IG matchup, and if anyone did watch that game, you will be reminded of how dominating he was in that matchup. It is really powerful. The fact that you can stack up 3 Ren stacks like almost immediately and then just pop them is just so much burst and trade damage, and also the amount of mobility that you get as well, which is a really big deal. So when you pair that up with a Galio, it's just such a strong 2v2, and while Braum can do a good job of mitigating some of that, I don't believe he stops the actual Ren stacks from building up inside you. So the moment his shield drops, he can pop just as quickly, especially in those early levels. So it's definitely an easy lane to play around for the side of SK.
Yeah, and especially once you see the Blazing King or even just the Bilgewater Cutlass come in for Kalista, having that extra slow, as well as you mentioned the mobility from the Hail of Blades, those first 3 auto attacks, you can instantly get on towards your target, give yourself a lot of tools to play with. But I also think for SK, since we are focusing on their early game, it's worth pointing out mid lane as well. Thinking about trying to gank a Syndra, usually she's a relatively safe champion because she can use her Scat of the Week to knock away any jungler, especially a Rek'Sai whose approach is very slow and telegraphed. But if Morgana just uses the Black Shield on towards the Rek'Sai, there are abilities for them to look for moves around the mid lane early as well.
There are just a couple of technical issues getting into the game, which is why we are continuing to talk without any action underneath us. The computers are getting restarted, and we'll get official updates from League officials in just a minute's time. So apologies for that, of course, but it means we have more time to talk.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk about Syndra into Morgana. Now, I don't recall what the Morgana mid from earlier in the day maxed, but usually you would put 3 points in your Tormented Soil, and then you would max Q into E. That's what I seem to recall from the Morgana mid of my days. Now, the problem with that is the strength of the spell shield is obviously not very high, right? And when you're playing this utility-heavy Morgana, I wouldn't be surprised if we did see actually second max, or at least putting points in the Black Shield, because your role isn't really to kill anything, it is there to provide utility, you know, by going with the Glacial Augment and slowing everything down. And I think that with against a Syndra, if you do put extra points in your E, then it means the risk of you getting stunned is very low. But in the early levels, you can just instantly pop her Black Shield with a QW combo, and then you set up for the stun. So, like, I think that it can be a very rough matchup for Morgana, and it gives a lot of options for Xerxe to set up ganks with the Jarvan.
Yeah, and I think importantly for Pirean, he needs to be very... he needs to decide the right moments to use the Black Shield, because you shouldn't be using Black Shield just like absorb poke trades from the Syndra, I don't think.
True, it's true.
So if you save it until you actually already see the Scout of the Week come through, I don't think he should be under too much risk of being fired upon, especially once you finish off the GLP. It becomes actually very difficult to close the gap on towards that Morgana when she has the extra slow field from quite a long range thanks to the Glacial Augment.
And the one thing we didn't talk about the first time we saw it was that she actually runs the change dematerializer. And now that you only have 3, and you can like proc it early, you actually get to that wave clear point a little bit earlier in the game with the Morgana. And having chatted with Frosk a lot, she's very enthusiastic about the fact that you have, it brings a lot of champions that had weaker wave clear kind of to the forefront. Things like Lux and Ahri, and now Morgana into the fray, that all have the potential to be a little bit more relevant.
Yeah, and the important thing about the dematerializer changes in terms of those champions being buffed is the damage increase increase, the percent damage increase you get against different minion types went up on this patch. Even though you get less total stacks, you're still going to do more damage. So importantly, those types of champions will be able to clear caster minions off of just 1 or 2 spells, which is a big weakness of those types of picks.
So in terms of, like, we've kind of talked about some of the intricacies of the matchups, and we'll look at those more as we get on into the game. We'll actually see them play out, which always makes it a lot more easy to visualize, of course. In terms of play styles for these two teams, Duke said that he thinks SK have been forced into a very early game focus, a very early game team that just needs to accelerate early leads. Would you guys agree with that? And do you think Splyce have a good way of countering that sort of play style?
Yeah, so I would generally agree, because when you look at SK's composition, they do not have much damage when it comes to later game team fights, especially magic damage. The Morgana, one of the big weaknesses we saw out of that pick in game 1 was that you didn't have a huge impact in the team fights. But also, we know Kalista is going to get outscaled by the Vayne in the fights. The Rek'Sai, not going to be quite as useful as the Jarvan's ability to hard engage these tools. If anything, the one area of the map where they do outscale is going to be Hecarim, because he's running the Ignite as well as Conqueror up against the Shen. Side lane should be very good, and Hecarim is a very strong team fighter. So that's sort of the wild card for SK. If they are going to challenge in the team fights, I think it's going to be mainly due to Werlyb.
Well, keep our eyes on Werlyb in the top lane. His Hecarim performance in game 1 was pretty exemplary. Was able to get quite a few leads and was winning that 1v1 matchup against Sjokz. But Sjokz here on more of a dedicated tank, so perhaps harder to kill in the in those sort of like 1v1 moments. And I think the question now becomes, you know, can SK evolve and adapt enough through this series? Because game 1, they were pretty strong. They came back against Splyce. Game 2, game 3, Splyce seemed to grow into the series, grow into the best of 5, and SK didn't really react to that growth coming out from their opponents.
I think I think they tried to. Again, we talked a little bit about it in game 3, where it felt like they went more for a scaling option, because that's what they expected from Splyce, that the games would end up going along, and they weren't prepared for a very quick early game transitioning into a strong mid game from Splyce, because that's not conventionally what you see. And I just find it very surprising how they compensated for one of the most common weaknesses, which is Sjokz often getting isolated and dying with the Tahm Kench pick. Now, this time around, they have not drafted much of a 1-3-1. Like, they have options to do it in the sense that they do have shit. So I guess it's more of a 1-4.
Yeah, but even with Shen and sideline, I think Hecarim is going to outscale in the 1v1.
Sure.
So if anything, it's more of like you absorb pressure and then can ult in for a
Yes,
fight.
I think so. Remember, though, we have seen Kobbe run teleport on the Vayne as well, so he could also send her to a side lane, so there's potential for a 1-3-1. But ultimately, I think we're going to see more team fighting this time around, and I think that's a better environment for SK to be in.
I love team fighting, Vedius, but due to a technical issue, getting into Game Champion Selection is going to be remade. It's same pick, same bans. We are not going to show it on the broadcast, so you get to continue looking at, you know, the players, maybe sometimes at Vedius's face, Ender's face, my face at times, but we should be getting on into the action as soon as possible. And I want to remind people just how important this game is for Splyce. You know, across the last 4 times they have played in playoffs, they've actually gone to 5 games and they've lost 3 of those 4 games. They've been only once in the last few years have they actually made it past the first round of playoffs. They keep getting knocked out in round 1, in the quarterfinals as they used to be known. And here they are just at match point. They're 1 game away from showing that they really belong amongst some of the best teams in Europe.
Yeah, and Splyce have been a team that has actually been pretty unlucky with who they draft in the first round of playoffs historically, where they have played against G2, I think, twice. They played against Schalke last year in Summer Split when Schalke ended up going all the way to the finals and getting 2nd place. And they pushed those teams to 5 games in a lot of cases. So this is definitely a team that has always been up there in terms of playoffs and performance, but hasn't quite been able to push to that next level in a little bit of time.
Well, we'll see if they can push that next level in this series. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone is in the lobby. We will be getting back into game very shortly. Thank you very much for bearing with us through this technical issue. You've had to listen to us speak a lot about the game, and we will repeat some of these things once we're actually in the game. But it's been a pretty exciting series overall. I definitely think that SK have surprised a number of people. Games 1 and game 2 were definitely very close. And even though I think there were a number of mistakes, I also felt like we saw a lot of very positive things from the young rookie squad as well. So I'm excited to see what they can do in game 4. Splyce once again looking like the heavy favorites as we move into game 4, considering how dominant their performance was in game 3.
And I think you can't look past how inexperienced at sort of the highest level this SK lineup is. You know, you've got Crownshot, Werlyb, and Selfmade. I was trying to think of the other Mad Lions, and Selfmade, who have all come up from the Mad Lions in EU Masters. Like, Werlyb played back in 2015 in playoffs, but they lost to H2K 3-0 and didn't actually get past the first round on Giants. Then you've got Pirean, who's kind of bounced all across the map, has played a playoff performance in the LCK with SKT, was on Phoenix 1, was an Impulse. And then you have Dreams, whose biggest accomplishment was playing on Mysterious Monkeys a couple of seasons ago. So this team is kind of like the next generation of EU talent, in my opinion. It's kind of the bedrock of the LEC, and these are the guys that we'll see for years to come.
Yeah, and it makes you just so excited to see the young blood like this actually competing at the highest level. You know, they've made it to playoffs. No one expected that from this team coming into the split. Even halfway through, like, yeah, we think they're a good team, but how long does it go?
And you look at the teams they knocked out, right? Misfits, Sjokz, both of those teams were kind of bandied around as some of the big names in the LEC, and then SK kind of rose up as this dark horse and just took away the spot of people who perhaps would have thought they deserved it.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because while rookies are very exciting, it's also interesting to watch the growth of, like, let's not forget Xerxe. It feels like just yesterday that he was rookie of the split, right? And he was new to the league, and now he's one of the established junglers, and he's been having a great series. And then you think of even older veterans like Vizicsacsi, who's been playing League for, what, like 6 years in Europe, and like the fact that he can still maintain with a lot of the young blood that comes into our league is very impressive. And while Europe has this tendency to produce a lot of new young talent, we also have a lot of old veteran talent that seems to be able to maintain a very high level of performance.
Or even continue to grow in their performance. I mean, you look at Xerxe and Chachi, you would have put them near the top, but I think this split we've seen Xerxe grow, this split we've seen Chachi grow as well, and they just continue to iterate and evolve alongside League of Legends, which is always evolving as a game.
Yeah, just learning how to adapt and learning how to continually come back and impress. And for a player like Xerxe, I think he was actually rated as maybe the second best jungler during the regular season for a very long time. It was only towards the last few weeks that people started bringing up names like Broxa, like Cold into the picture, but he came in today. He came in today and has had such huge impacts in the game. He has absolutely read Selfmade during these early games, and he's a big part why Splyce haven't fallen behind in games where they have picked scaling and why they have snowballed in games where they have the early.
Yes, he has. I've very much enjoyed Xerxe playing. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there's some great news. The loading screen.
Don't say it until the loading screen stops, Vedius.
But it's great.
I was ready to say it, and I was like, no, I'm going to hold off until we're actually on Summoner's Rift and the game hasn't been paused again.
But we are very close.
Now you've stolen my thunder.
Well, very close, and I'm excited. I'm looking forward to this game. Many predictions are on the line. I think a lot of the analysts predicted Splyce.
3-1 Splyce was a...
But like, no. So there's a bunch of 3-2s, there's a bunch of 3-1s, and then you and I were the only ones going 3-0s. Yeah. But
shows what you know.
Yeah, shows what we know, right? But yeah, there's a lot on the line. Quick Shot went for his SKE prediction. He's still holding out. Game
Still could
4.
happen.
Still could happen.
Yeah. You never know how a team's going to bounce back after a game like that last one.
Man, these prediction points they're scary.
I was super hoping for a 3-0, I'll be honest, because I would have been one behind Twitter.
You would have.
And I feel like Twitter's bandied around, like the public at large, being like, oh, we're the best analysts. Look, they have millions of people's brains. I only have one person's brains, and I'm close. I'm close to millions of people. But they've got millions.
I'm impressed that you think millions votes in this.
In the most popular league in the world.
Yeah, I've been terrible this, but I'm actually near the bottom right now. Ever since Deficio left, I haven't been able to ride on his coattails anymore. So
where are you, Ender? You kind of middle of the pack.
I think I'm 1 point behind you.
Okay, so
I'm really close.
Pretty
I mean, there's
weak.
a lot of people.
Pretty weak over.
All right, Medic.
So because Vedius over-anticipated, we do actually have another bug coming into the game, which means I believe we're going to have to just jump on out and remake things. Hopefully, we'll get it sorted out as soon as possible for you guys. And while we do that, I think we can talk a little bit now, because we kind of talked a lot about Splyce and SK. Their opponent's Fnatic, right? Yesterday, we saw them absolutely destroy Vitality. The winner of this series will play against Fnatic next week in our round 2 matches. And I think either team that comes out of this will be wanting to just kind of refine the way they've played a little bit today if they're going to stand a chance against Fnatic.
Well, I think the scary thing about Fnatic is I actually don't think they showed a lot yesterday. I think Vitality lost a lot more than Fnatic won.
And they're out of here.
So I think it's actually very difficult to assess how strong Fnatic will look. But the one thing I will say about Fnatic is that they look the same as they did during the regular season. And I mean, on the one hand, that's scary because they obviously went 8-1 in the second half of the split, and that's very good. But at the same time, their playstyle is, I don't want to say one-dimensional, but like you can almost expect what's going to happen, right? And while they are very good at it, it's one of those things that you can plan for and look to play around. The question is, can you actually handle the quality bar that they do bring to a game? So
that is definitely the question. While we wait here to get on into our fourth game of the day, we're going to hand it over to Sjokz and friends at the analyst desk.
Friends.
Thank you very much. Not entirely sure what camera I'm looking at. Oh, there we go. Yes, so unfortunately we are switching servers and we will have about 10 to 15 minutes until we get to the new server and have all the picks and bans redone. The picks and bans will remain the same, so at least we can talk about that and kind of think what will happen in this game. We're going to take a look at them in just a second. What were the biggest surprises, knowing that this could be the elimination game for SK?
Galio got first pick.
Yeah, I was going to say, how about that Galio first pick? That hasn't been touched pretty much this entire series. It does definitely fit kind of with the MO of Dreams, who's had an incredible performance. He has a playmaking-oriented support, so at least, you know, this is a champion that you expect that he could step up on. But that was such a curveball.
Yeah, we said we needed to see SK try to find like at least one lane to play around early, because last game they didn't really have that, and then they just kind of fell over and they couldn't defend long enough to actually win the game when they went for Baron. So I think they probably just said, listen guys, the full late game thing didn't work for that one game. We have to win now. Let's try and swap it again and get a bit more aggression coming in early with like Galio, Kalista. The problem is when you show it that early, things like Vayne, Braum will not really struggle too hard against it. So that's going to make it a lot harder.
Yeah, because if you think about it in the context of, you know that they have a very strong bot side as well, is it then wise to show it that early?
I think it kind of introduced some interesting mind games where if I'm looking at the Galio, I'm like, okay, you know, why do you priority pick a Galio when it feels like the Rek'Sai wants to be there? But it almost forces them to then respond by taking away the Jarvan.
I just want to highlight for people watching the picks here, there is a small mistake. Braum is actually on the other side with Splyce, and Morgana is picked by SK, but in the second phase.
It even confuses the graphics.
It's just so people don't get completely confused. It's not like they're running a Galio mid in this game and Braum down in the support role. But yeah, I think this draft is super hard to play for SK on their side. They also do have the Hecarim top, which actually worked okay in the first game. That could be a shine light. And I think the fact that you have Rek'Sai coming in for Selfmade is pretty crucial because he needs a really good early jungle matchup.
Personally, for me, I felt like Werlyb was very hit and miss on the Hecarim performance. There were sometimes you like watch it play, you're like, yes, Werlyb, that was crazy, that was insane. There was other times like, Werlyb, please just go in. I think what's really important about Hecarim top, since we've only seen it a couple times, was permabanned in the previous best of 5 of Fnatic versus Vitality, is that he does require jungle resources. And that's not meaning that he needs to gank the lane all the time or have his lane ganked, but he needs to be pushing because he's about spamming that Q. And because it is kind of that Rafflecopter, when he wants to make the aggressive chip away plays at you, it means that he's inherently going to also be shoving the lane forward. So the jungler just has to have priority there because Hecarim does open himself up to be ganked. Last time around, Selfmade didn't have that jungle priority, and Werlyb had to play the matchup very far back. This time around, he should be a lot more aggressive and in the face.
Yeah, and I think this will also show us if they're learning from their mistakes, because that was game 1. Now they're going for that pick again, and we know that Hecarim is extremely strong. The minute he gets Trinity Force, he can just run it down and kill everybody, or at least CC everybody as well. So we'll have to see if they make that adaptation in their playstyle as well as in their picks and bans. What do we make about this Morgana being so prevalent all of a sudden in this series?
I thought that was actually very surprising that he got picked in this specific game, because I felt like the entire draft from SK was very much screaming kind of all in towards the back line. You know, you have Galio, Hecarim, Rek'Sai can all try and reach onto someone like Kobbe, reach onto Humanoid on the Syndra, and then they grab Morgana with it. To me, it was much more about kiting backwards in the way we've seen Morgana being played now with like Glacial Augment and these kind of things. I thought he's going to go Zoe. because it actually worked pretty well for him in game 2 when he had it. So that one surprised me quite a lot, and I'm not sure it's actually going to help SK too much in this draft.
I feel like the mentality is that he saw Syndra and he was like, okay, do I have a champion that can survive this lane phase? And do I have a champion that can help empower my Rek'Sai to get in through the scatter the weak? Because I think that's the issue. Like, while you have all of this engage, you can drop the black shield on the Rek'Sai, and then hopefully Rek'Sai can actually get in and find the unburrow, and then likewise he can survive lane. But I do agree, it didn't really fit in the larger scheme of things. I think it was a very like shoot from the hip, reactive type of pick that Pirean was looking for because it was a blind pick Syndra.
Yeah, and sometimes in those situations, it's like, yes, you then negate that power and you can black shield it, but what else does it really offer you? And it might turn out not to be the best decision that you could have made. Something else, what could have fit here better?
Again, for me,
Zoe.
Orianna, maybe. Deficio brought up a good point because we were talking about this. He's like, you don't pick Orianna into Syndra Jarvan because you would just die, but
yeah, we'll
you're
see
looking
how
more for
it
your
plays
5v5.
out. We'll see how it plays out also. If you're just joining us also, we do have a technical delay on stage ahead of Game 4 between SK and Splyce. League officials are now working on getting everything ready, so hopefully we'll get into the game whenever we can and whenever everything is set up. So we are still at 1-2, still at match point for Splyce. Now that you've seen the comps, what are the probabilities of Splyce taking it?
I think they're very high.
Yeah.
Right here, I think they have a lot of ways to protect Kobbe, who's going to be the big win condition with Shen top lane. We actually saw in game 2, Chachi using all these TPs to bot lane as well, just to try and get them ahead. I think he will do exactly the same here. The moment we hit 2 items on that Vayne, I think it's pretty much game over. And I think Splyce, they know this. So that we had the Duke interview where he basically said, listen, we knew that SK would try and go for more early game because it didn't work with the full late game draft. Now we're trying to force them to be aggressive, and we think they're going to make a mistake. And when that happens, we will win. So that's very much we don't actually believe you can snowball. So we have Vayne ready to just carry the game when we get there.
Frosk?
I think it's a mental read. I love Duke's plan right there. I agree with Deficio. I think the big question for me for SK is like, what kind of damage can Werlyb do on this Hecarim pick? You know, is this something that is deserved to be permabanned for an entire series? Or if Kobbe gets massive on this Vayne, Hecarim can also get to a point where if he just flies into the back line and then just forces Kobbe out of a fight. But I don't know. I wasn't really inspired by the first time we saw it. And because I haven't seen enough tape of the champion, I also don't know how powerful Hecarim top is. I know exactly how powerful Vayne is. That champion is terrifying.
Well, we've heard that Hecarim is extremely strong. You know, we
lot of damage, man.
know it, but the question is Werlyb and Hecarim as strong in
Also,
the moment?
Rek'Sai, you think you got Selfmade and Werlyb just flying back at Kobbe? If he mispositions once, if someone's just not on top of it and they don't defend their ADC, they do have the tools to do it, then...
That would be the worst Braum of all time then.
Yeah.
If he's like running off somewhere over on the side,
Chasing
he's like,
someone
I want to kill this guy. He's obviously going to be there. I think Syndra also provides even more CC coming in on that side. So the whole thing is literally peel for your back line, also with Shen on their side. So it's going to be very difficult late game. But that's the thing now. I think SK are forced into picking for early game, and that's why I said last game was kind of meta-defining for this series. That Splyce showed you can't draft for late game against us, we will win then. It forced SK to go back to a style that it's not always been too successful for them, because this series, they've actually done well when they got to like 40 minutes. Now they don't want to get there.
Mm-hmm. And what I want viewers to kind of watch for, especially when they're watching Splyce, because this is always coming down to 5v5s, watch where Kobbe stands and how his team zones for him. You expect the Vayne will be standing next to the Syndra because the Syndra threatens. You can't dive back onto him. I'll just scatter the weak, push you out. You expect that Braum's constantly going to be shielding up Vayne, moving with her, disengaging with his Q. And the nice thing is even though you have a Jarvan in this composition, he's not necessarily there to force an engagement unless they find a clean pick or it's like time for the go button. You know, people got whittled down or something like that. But because he has the Demacia flag, like again, Kobbe just goes sick for this game. This can just be Splyce moving very slowly around their ADC until they see their moment where they lunge forward.
Oh yeah, to me it just looks like it's set up for Kobbe and for Splyce to close it out, but they do have to do it. Now we've talked a lot about picks and bans, and while we wait, we can also get a bit more insight for SK because Laure is standing by with their strategic coach.
Thank you, Sjokz, but it is not the strategic code, it is Brokenshard again. How are you feeling now? It's match point for Splyce. How are the guys on stage?
I mean, we just need to regroup ourselves and get our thoughts together so that the last game, something like that doesn't happen again, where we don't really have answers to what they can do on the map. This game, we give ourselves a lot more tools to really pressure Splyce. And obviously, like, I feel like a lot of the players are playing champions that we've been practicing a lot as well. So I think we have pretty good chances to snowball this game.
Can you talk me through what went wrong during the game 3? Were you expecting the Vel'Koz pick, for example?
I mean, we kind of could guess that they could play some kind of weird mages with Tamkench, like Kobbe's played Victor in the past and Cassio. So maybe the specific pick might have been a bit weird, but we kind of expected them to play some kind of wave clear mage. In that game, the players weren't really able to execute on the windows that were opening to them, and we decided that this type of composition was just not suited to us.
Okay.
And we were just going to try something else for the fourth game.
Awesome. Now going into game 4, I went into the audience and asked some questions to people sitting here, and I found Alex in the audience, and he wants to know, why are you losing to late game comps when you have the edge in the early game?
The thing is, like, stage and practice are completely two different things. In practice, games are much more hectic and snowbally, and we're able to push our early advantages. In the stage games, we're not finding the same early advantages that we have. So it's a bit difficult, especially with a rookie team, to kind of get used to the fact that scrims are going to be like X and stage games are going to be like Y. To be honest, Splyce were losing late games with late game comps, and we were winning late game with early game comps. So, Alex, it's not so as simple as just like pick late game, win late game.
All right, well, thank you for your insight, and thank you, Alex, for the question. Now
Thanks,
back to
Alex.
you, Sjokz.
Alex is on Brokenshard's list, man.
That guy
Alex
went
is gonna
in.
Brokenshard is right now going straight into the Alex, where the hell are
I would love is Alex Miller, the owner of SK. He's like, why are you guys doing that?
Oh my God, I love that. Great stuff, Laure. Apparently, he knows nothing about strategy. Also, Brokenshard, he's not the strategic coach.
I like that, yeah.
Sorry.
He's the head coach.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, we're making a bit light of the situation. I think everyone will forgive us for that since we've been waiting a little bit. But he did give some good insight. He said, well, things are just not translating every time to the stage, and I think that's also to be expected.
Yeah, and again, with a rookie, squad with a lot of inexperience, I like the word that he also used in tools, that he wanted to empower his players to have tools that they could try to force plays into the early game against Splyce. Now they actually have to execute on them, because in game number 1, things went very sideways.
Yeah, I just heard that they were trying to track down Alex, but they can't find him anymore. So maybe
He left.
ran away. He's ran away. We don't know. So yeah, as we refocus in on this game, sorry, it's just really funny. I'm very sorry.
I just love how he went and he's like, why are you guys losing? Oh, damn, Alex, they have families.
Yeah, and then he's like out. So I did get an update that they are back on the new server, and they are now remaking the picks and bans, so it will be the same composition as before. So in terms of, SK has been through this, right? The first game they played on stage, they went through the remake against Fnatic.
Yeah, that's true, and they won.
And they won, so I feel like they can thrive. Excuse me, I just heard that we did find Alex.
Get him in
Okay,
the
and
pip.
what are we going to do?
Are we going to
Production?
interview Alex?
Okay, we're gonna see Alex.
Oh.
Hi, Alex.
That's Alex.
Is that a Splyce hoodie? No. It's some other non-defined brand. Hey, Alex, you're doing a great job. I think maybe you can join the crew because I like your questions.
And we all lost to Twitter and Superior Analyst.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't lose to Twitter.
No.
frankly, Alex isn't part of the problem.
And seeing how we are completely losing the plot, the game is ready. So we're going to go back to the casters.
Thank you very much, Sjokz. We are back on a non-defined Rift. There we are. Okay, let's put on our serious faces here, guys. It's game 4. Splyce are 1 game away from facing Fnatic in round 2 of the first ever LEC Playoffs. SK have drafted a relatively early game comp. Splyce have drafted more scaling.
Come on, Alex, let's see if they can do it for you. This is the early game that matters.
Let's talk about, we kind of broke down a lot of the matchups before we had the extended pause. Is there any way you guys would want to look first? Any way you'd want to discuss first?
Well, no,
wait a
level 1
second.
flash. Oh, he has no flash.
With the taunt, he's got no flash. And Splyce come out on top early on.
So I'd like to talk about Kobbe getting first blood on Vayne
Yeah.
when SK need to snowball bot lane to get the win here. Because he gets 400 gold off that. He's going to get a longsword and an extra potion. That should make the 2v2 pretty easy.
Definitely evens it out a little bit for them, getting the extra longsword, a bit of extra damage. We have actually seen a very similar level 1 where the Vayne gets a kill in the Fnatic game up against XL in week 8. It was a bit more of an invade that time, but having a Braum at level 1 just makes it so much easier for you to get kills. Concussive blows is so easy to stack, and although Crownshot and Dreams will be able to pull the wave here and get the wave pushing in their favor, you still think Kobbe and Norskeren are ahead.
So let's have a look at this level 1 and see exactly what Splyce decided to do. So the first thing you'll notice is that the bot lane has decided to group up with the team, and they're going to start moving through. They're going to come in from behind Werlyb, and they're going to sneak into this burst. So he has no visibility, right? So as we roll the replay, what you'll notice is that Werlyb has no information right now that this is happening, right? And remember that at level 1, he has no flash. So if we zoom in a little bit closer, you'll see how Vizicsacsi went over the wall with the taunt, and Werlyb has no idea that he is behind him. And with the duo at the bot lane, remember Werlyb, no flash, no way to get out of this situation. They're expecting Werlyb to be here, and then they come in for the collapse, and they end up locking him down. So really good stuff from the Splyce at level 1, and they set up for a very quick kill to start the game off very well.
Yeah, and we've seen them do this already, right? In game 2, I believe it was when they used the Recon to hop over the wall. They scouted out SK so well in these early levels. They see 2 games of Werlyb going to that same position. Now he's on the Hecarim without a flash and set up for a very well thought through first blood.
You can see how hard a lane it could be for Splyce though in this bottom side. And flash in already by Selfmade onto Humanoid. Cleansed flashes away. And with Selfmade being knocked back by the scat of the weak, Humanoid's able to survive.
So Ender and I are laughing at each other right now because one of the things we talked about was I really don't like this matchup. I think that it's a really good one for the Syndra. But then Ender was like, maybe they'll look for an early gank mid. And we both said, if she's running cleanse mid, I don't see it happening. And then at level 3, he comes in, flash, knockup. And you can't cleanse the knockup, so you guarantee the binding as well. And now he's looking for a repeat gank.
Humanoid has nowhere to go apart from underneath this tower and just can walk back to it safely. Pirean using the minion dematerializer here in the mid lane just to try and get that extra push off with the Morgana.
Yeah, and gonna be able to do that with the extra pressure he was provided with as Kobbe takes a nice trade in the bottom lane. Remember, he has the extra longsword to go for this fight. Now, looking at the summoner spell choices from this bottom lane, we see a difference because both ADCs went for the cleanse themselves. They see a lot of, hard CC on the other side where in these fights they need to stay safe. Wait a second!
Crownshot, one more order would have had the concussive blows, but the ignite comes out and Crownshot rends down Braum. Flash away from Dreams, flash in by Kobbe, one more order! Oh, it's enough! He gets him! Not going to chase him underneath the tower, but ends up being a 1-for-1 trade in the bottom lane.
That's a crazy 2v2 right there where you can see the early game power of Kalista plus Galio, but Vayne is no slouch either into these 2 picks. All the damage went down onto Norskeren to start things off, so it's Kobbe who gets yet another kill in this lane.
I do think the press the attack really adds a lot of early game power to the Vayne, and when you combine that with the silver bolts, and of course the extra longsword that she got from First Blood is definitely a great setup for Kobbe to be in. So he's now 2-0 on this Vayne very early on, and remember that for SK, their whole game plan and win condition was snowball through bot, rely on this early game Kalista to get ahead, and this is not the situation you want to find yourself in.
No, it's not. And while Kobbe did get 2 kills in this lane, I think SK do have some hope, and that is because there's basically no summoners left. It's just the cleanse for Kobbe that he still has. So we see Selfmade now level 4 pathing towards this bottom side of the map. Feels like they would love to look and punish, but it's Xerxe who spots him out.
They know the Krugs are there, they've spotted him out as you say, so Selfmade will just do his Krugs instead. Still the push advantage down towards Kobbe and Norskeren for the moment in that bottom lane. Across the rest of the map, you can see Sjokz actually having a bit of a CS lead towards the top side. He's backed away, he's got himself Ninja Tabis in the matchup against the Hecarim. Mid lane pretty even, but bot lane is definitely the place to be at the moment if you are a fan of action.
So once again, the Morgana is going for the Glacial Augment. I don't have time to talk about as, oh yeah, he's going to get spotted out on a ward, so he's likely not going to be able to do much with this. But the Glacial Augment in the Morgana mid lane, we already saw this in game 1. If you've only just joined us, this Morgana is very much about utility, primed to provide support for the rest of the team. And typically in this matchup, the reason why she struggles is because, ooh, we don't have time again, because more fighting.
No.
Just keep talking till
yeah, okay, that's fine. I'll keep talking. But basically, the reason why this is typically a bad matchup is because on the Morgana, you want to put early points in your W, and the range isn't especially long. So you actually have to walk up to the caster creeps in order to threaten the enemy caster creeps to clear them out. And at that range, Syndra can just sit near the melee creeps and just harass you back and basically make your life difficult. But because she has no summoner spells, she's forced to play defensively, which means that Morgana can always just walk up to the lane and has priority. So the early gank from Selfmade was so important, and it has made this matchup so much easier for Pirean to play.
Yeah, and while mid lane definitely got the help from Selfmade, bottom lane, not the same story because it's Xerxe been constantly pathing around there and providing vision, even though there hasn't been a gank. You just saw Crownshot was forced to reset, to miss a minion wave. They lost a plate down in that bottom lane, and the Ocean Drake went over towards Splyce as well. So I think that Xerxe getting a little bit of the upper hand in this early game by playing around his very strong Vayne at the moment.
That's definitely working out for Splyce. They have about an 800 gold lead, 7 minutes into the game. And Sjokz actually having a pretty easy performance in the top lane on the Shen as well. 15, 16 CS up. Obviously has a lot of experience on the Shen pick itself.
Yeah, and you expect to see the Shen win the early laning phase. We're going to have to hold that thought because Xerxe gonna have to flash over this wall. And Werlyb, that's not even Selfmade going for the red buff invade. Usually it's those two. That's crazy.
It's very aggressive play from the mid lane.
Morgana got it. Morgana got it.
Gets it with the Tormented Sword. Obviously not the best, but still being able to force the flash away from Xerxe, get the push pressure in mid so you can actually go for that invade, and then still just be able to get out scot-free is very good stuff from SK.
Yeah, but take a look at that trade here from Vizicsacsi. This is what we were sort of talking about with the Shen in the early levels, especially with the buffs to the Q. His trading against Hecarim is going to be very, very nice. He basically taunt forward, land that pretty easily on towards the Hecarim, get down some auto attacks, and use the dodge field to make sure he can't be traded against. Now, Selfmade won't be able to find this gank, I don't think, unless he can get the Black Shield down onto him. That is the unique strength of having the Morgana in the mid lane, is that it provides you the safety net and the CC immunity for Selfmade to approach as the Rek'Sai.
A little bit of an item disparity in the bottom lane as we saw Kobbe go back, get the Xerxe Greaves and a Vampiric Scepter. Selfmade looking for the flash and burrow here onto Humanoid, who flashes away, but Pirean with the binding won't quite connect. Humanoid still had the cleanse if that binding had hit him. And across the board, like a little bit of a back and forth, a little bit of a to and fro between these two teams early on. The taunt's going to land here, but the concussive blows comes out as well. Justice Punch knocked into Norskeren, who puts up the shield, but there's a lot of Ren stacks coming in. The fake call comes out. Crownshot knocked away with the Condemn. And the Splyce bot lane continue to try and trade onto SK. Of course, they have the Ocean Dragon picked up, so they can take these trades and then use the sustain from that Drake.
Yeah, the trading definitely going in the favor here of Vayne. You see the strength of the Vayne in towards the Galio, where you can knock him away or dodge away from the initial engage, and Norskeren positioning as well in front of the dash of Dream, so he couldn't use that to escape after good trade. Now both junglers will be headed towards the bottom side of the map.
Going for the dive.
Norskeren there with the Glacial Fissure. Catch out Dreams. Kobbe's gone very deep. Selfmade there. Lots of damage coming out. There's a Hero's Entrance as well as Selfmade pops. The Void Seeker gets one. Unstoppable Onslaught comes out from Werlyb as they jump onto Xerxe as well, and that's a second. 2 kills across to SK as they counter the dive.
The tower dive was just way too greedy here from Splyce. They knew they had the lead on towards Vayne, but we heard Duke talk about it before the match. They didn't need to win bot lane. They just needed to survive it, because that's SK's win condition. And now all of a sudden, 3 quick and easy kills puts them in a much better spot.
So keep your eyes on Kobbe in this situation. It's the fact that he flashes onto the backline to try and secure that kill that actually puts him in the dangerous situation. Remember, he's a lot of the damage, but it means that Selfmade and Werlyb can just dive on top of him, and now all of the tools have been used. So the moment that Werlyb arrives in the fight, it's literally just a matter of cleanup, because there's nothing stopping him from just running over the rest of Splyce.
Xerxe was still only level 5 in that fight as well, to Selfmade's level 7, so didn't have the Cataclysm, didn't have that extra damage. And SK, after a little bit of a weak start, have actually come out swinging here and equalized that gold differential.
Now notice SK's decision-making on top of the map, because after getting the win down bot lane, you might think, wait, we want the 2v2, but no. Because Shen used his Stand United to get into the fight, they're going topside to avoid the TP mismatch, where they wouldn't be able to play around their bottom lane. It also gives them the added benefit of there being a Rift Herald up here, whereas no Drake will spawn for the next minute. So overall, it's a very solid map movement here from SK.
I very much concur, Ender. And I think that now SK are looking to try and push that as much as they can. They're going to use the Herald immediately towards the top side. And also keep your eyes on the mid lane. You'll notice that because all of the members of SK have actually gone up towards the top side of the map, Pirean is immediately forced to play very defensively with Jarvan hanging around that mid tier 1, and the risk of a potential dive means that SK have just basically thrown everything towards the top lane to try and secure the first tower of the game.
They just about get it. Kobbe was actually hitting minions for a little while there. Maybe would have been able to get the tower if he had decided just to focus it down. But still, goal pretty much even between these two teams just as we come past the 11-minute mark, with Infernal Dragon up in 20 seconds or so. It seems like that's the position on the map that Splyce are going to play towards.
Now, there will be some big cooldowns missing if there is a fight that breaks out around this objective. No Stand United for Vizicsacsi, no Heroes entrance for Dreams down on the bottom side. But apart from that, both teams are relatively well equipped for this fight. But notice the vision control. Because the map was split and Splyce controlled bot side, they have all the control words to dominate the vision.
Humanoid caught out, deciding not to use the cleanse, taunted, straight away uses the cleanse, but the Soul Shackle's going to come down as well. He pops the Unleashed Power onto Pirean, Dreams gets the kill, down towards the bottom side, the Void Rush comes out from Selfmade, double knock up though, and Kobbe can open up with this Vayne. They're going to catch out Dreams, who goes golden. Crownshot caught in the Cataclysm, running away. Dreams down towards the bottom side, Werlyb coming in, the knockback with the decimating charges on Kobbe. Crownshot will take him, Dreams will die, and still Werlyb holds off on the ultimate. SK come out on top in the fight though.
Ends up being a 2-for-2, but as you rightly said, SK are the ones that come out on top. They're the ones setting up siege onto this tier 1 and will secure more plates. And honestly, the amount of time that Splyce were able to stall out as Chachi now in danger.
Chased out, he was baiting for a long time there. Just tried to keep fighting against Werlyb, but couldn't do anything.
Ends up just killing himself. He ends up dying isolated once more, increasing his total to 24 as SK look to build up an even bigger early game lead.
And the most impressive part is that Werlyb didn't actually need his ultimate when he came in. He used the charge initially to just assassinate Kobbe, and that meant that he held on to it. And I don't think Vizicsacsi was really respecting that when he went for this pointless duel over by the blue buff.
I do think that the cleanse should have just come out immediately from Humanoid. The fact that he holds onto it for too long means he doesn't actually dodge from the Soul Shackles, so he dies to the Ignite and the Galio. And you think at this point, oh, Kobbe, he's just going to find a bunch of kills, but then you see the Zhonya's coming out from Dreams, means that Kobbe gets indecisive and doesn't commit to Crownshot. So Crownshot in a 1v2 actually ends up forcing the enemy back, and that provides time for Werlyb to then join the fight. So the indecision from Kobbe around the Zhonyas from Dreams means that he ends up dropping in the fight, and that's why SK are able to take it.
And ultimately, without this kill on the back half with Vizicsacsi, again, no idea what he's doing right now. It was just an even 2-for-2, and you can see that without having Werlyb there right at the start of the fight, the 5v5 was a little bit more challenging for SK to maneuver.
A long time ago, though, we talked about the Hail of Blades Kalista in this bottom lane. We said how strong she can be, how Uzi played her incredibly well in the RNG versus IG match. 3-1-1 on Crownshot already. If you want an early game powerhouse, if you want someone who will spike at that 20-minute, that 2-item mark, a Kalista with a bunch of kills under her belt is definitely that champion.
She certainly is, and you kind of need her to be that strong. Typically, she doesn't have to be this strong at this point in the game, but the fact that she is definitely a big advantage for SK. Now, I think she's working towards the Runan's Hurricane second. Typically, I like to see the Rage Blade second. I personally think it's a really big spike, but I have seen preference differentials between the two AD carries. Norskeren going for a bit of a trade, but it's definitely a little bit more of a team fight itemization choice where you can then get rend onto multiple targets rather than just trying to build as many as quickly as possible onto a single.
Hold your thought.
Stand United use his Xerxe going in, Pirean flashes away. And Xerxe just going to get caught out by the tower. Good stuff from Pirean to escape. Did have to burn his flash, of course, but it's a big ultimate used by Chachi. Now Selfmade is waiting around the corner here in the top lane. Norskeren and Kobbe giving him respect, giving him the time of day, and just retreating back behind that remnant of a tower.
Void Hunter looking for a plate, wasn't able to find anything because Norskeren and Kobbe were playing very defensively. And remember that the Shen ult is unavailable, so SK feel pretty confident that they can look for this fight, and it's just going to force Kobbe and Norskeren back, which then allows Selfmade full control over the topside jungle.
Yeah, and the tides have really turned in this 2v2. Granted, Selfmade is giving a lot of control over towards the duo lane, who's currently pushing topside, but because they invaded this whole top area of the map, it becomes very easy for Pirean and Werlyb to knock down this tower. And look how far forward they are. They're sitting inside of the bush, looking for a dive or looking for a pick or looking for something. This team really is willing always to take the 50-50 fights. If they see an opportunity, they will pounce.
And it's very easy to forget how poorly this game started for SK, you know. We saw a kill going over to Kobbe at level 1. He was able to get into the lane with a longsword with an extra potion. But SK have found the picks, have found the plays to turn it around, and now actually in looking a very strong position at the 15-minute mark. They said this is an early game comp. Juke said we wanted them to play an early game comp. Well, it's working out well for SK so far.
Yeah, and a lot of it is off the back of a couple of small mistakes from Splyce, but also just some good team fights coming out from the side of SK.
Be sure to check out our POV stream at twitch.tv/RiotGames2 and our YouTube channel. Should we go to a Game 5, we'll see the game through the eyes of the supports, but which one is entirely up to you. Spam the chat now, Dreams or Norskeren, depending on who you want to see.
I believe right now we are looking at the game through Vizicacsi's eyes. Yes.
I believe so as well, but they haven't put that in the auto queue, so basically guesswork.
Yeah.
It's either Vizicsacsi or Werlyb.
Shen gameplay, always the most riveting.
Hey, he's got 3 kills.
That's why I said always the most riveting.
I don't like your sarcasm, Vedius.
There was no sarcasm there. I love Shen.
Okay. I'm gonna ask a pretty direct question here, guys, and I pre-warned you about that.
I am a really good player.
Oh, Norskeren's actually fighting in the bottom lane. Crownshot uses the hero's entrance. Noskeren forced back, Selfmade gets behind them. Kobbe having to jump away with the final hour. Dreams tries to get underneath the tower, but can't land the taunt. Xerxe here in time. Werlyb diving under the tower as well. Forced back. Pirean was coming in from the side, and Splyce should just give up the pressure on this tower. They can't fight against all 5 members of SK.
SK had the players down here, the numbers advantage, and they will get the tower, but I actually think it's a big mistake from Selfmade at the start. He saw blood in the water on Kobbe, and he got both summoners off of that champion, but had he just focused Norskeren right off the bat, it could have been an easy kill here for SK.
Can't blame him for trying to target out Kobbe. He's played Vayne 5 times in his career, has never lost on it, hasn't died on the champion this split at all.
Well, he has twice.
Yes, now he has. He hadn't before today died on a Vayne at all this split. Splyce definitely on the back foot as SK continue to advance. 2k up. Next Dragon is a mountain for them if they want it. That will be spawning in about 8 seconds time.
Ooh, good binding, landing onto Xerxe. As SK playing this early game extremely well. They've been able to secure... Ooh, they didn't quite get the bot tower, but all of the outer towers are down. But already 18 minutes in, it feels like SK have full control over the map. And I always get so impressed with what Selfmade is able to do on this Rek'Sai. It feels like that his presence in counter-ganking towards the bot side of the map, the fact that he was able to alleviate a lot of the pressure from Pirean in the mid lane, and overall his impact in this game has been a large part as to why SK have been able to have such a strong start.
And he's going to continue to be very important to this team as well, and I think we're seeing a little bit of a different style in terms of his build path with the early BF sword. That means he's itemizing in towards a second item, Guardian Angel, and that's something you don't always see on the Rek'Sai. It's usually going to be the Black Cleaver for the armor shred and the extra moon speed. All those stats are very good on the champion, but instead he knows that he's actually going to be diving more into these fights. I think that when you have a Hecarim and you see this very strong Vayne on the other side, he wants to look for that ult all the way back into the back line, and the GA will give him more of the tools to do that.
Well, they've continued to trade here. We'll get the decimating charge back onto Xerxe. If he charges when Xerxe has that Spirit's Refuge up, has that circle of damage reduction up, it actually doesn't do any damage, counts as an auto attack, so not actually going to be able to do too much. We'll still displace him out of it. And I can come back to my question. So we talked a lot about SK having an early game draft, having power early on and wanting to play through, you know, the first 20, 25 minutes of the game. But where is the break point? Where is the point where Splyce start to take over team fights, where Splyce start to be the team in advantage? Is it 2? Is it 3? Is it 4 items?
I would be looking more towards 3 items here for the side of Splyce. They can get 2 items. They can contest very well, but it's not very clear-cut to me at that point that they win. Ultimately, what I see as being the biggest problem here for SK is Vizicsacsi and Xerxe just stacking armor on these 2 tank champions, because Morgana in the mid lane is not going to provide you a whole lot of damage. She's mainly there to set up, you know, the CC denial on your AD carry. Look for some pick potential, have the CC in the fights, and SK do not have that much in the ways of damage other than the physical.
I think that's a really good point, Ender. And as we can see, a lot of AD is being built on the side of SK. But I love the fact that they're just not slowing down. And something that Splyce has often been praised for is their ability to kind of stall games out and just buy time to the point at which they can team fight. But SK have just been unrelenting in their pressure. They've been grouping up, they've been setting up good vision, and I've been impressed with how they're now working on this final tier 2 at only 20 minutes into the game. It takes a lot of confidence to play with this level of bravado and aggression.
I mean, for the same amount that we praised Splyce in Game 3 for their strong early game into mid-game performance, SK are proving they can do exactly the same thing. Assuming they can take down this mid lane tower, assuming they can, you know, get an Inferno, get a Baron next, then they should be looking at closing this game out in the next 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah. That is if they can, and that's always the challenging thing, right? Trying to siege against the Syndra is always very scary because of her ability to get that stun and potentially start a fight. But I do agree with Ender. I think what we're kind of waiting for is these big armor items to start coming through from the side of Splyce, and then they'll feel a lot more confident forcing these fights. But also now the Rage Blade is finished on Kobbe, I think that's a pretty big deal. I'm just really scared of this Rek'Sai right now. Level 11, 2 points in the ultimate. If you try to force a fight right now, I just think there's too much damage on SK's side, and I don't think Kobbe would be able to survive it all.
Yeah, I think Werlyb also finishing off the Trinity Force as well is going to be a very big spike for him, because one of the biggest strengths, I think, of having the Hecarim in your team is not only does he, you know, duel very strongly against all of the tanks in the top lane like the Shen later on in the game, but also his ultimate, because he has such long range on it and can't be interrupted during that cast, can actually just fly towards your backline. He can dive over your frontliners. You can just ignore those tanks and really have a high impact by diving in there and causing a lot of frustrations for someone like the Vayne.
I see Splyce being able just to stall out the game just a little bit at the moment, as SK maybe will look for something like the Bound. Of course, with the Kalista, you can take it so quickly. You have that rend that you can build up. Was nerfed a couple of patches ago, but still very powerful tool in terms of taking down those big monsters and objectives. And it feels like SK can't quite get that vision line as deep as they want it to pressure for this mid lane tower completely.
Yeah, I think what SK are just going to be doing is waiting for this Infernal Drake, play a little bit slower for the next few minutes, because around 25 minutes, they actually have a really good ability to force around the Baron. They have the Mountain Drake. If they can get another Infernal, it'll be great. They also might just fight.
And Norskeren forced to flash away there. The Scatter Weak did come out from Humanoid, but because of the binding connecting, Norskeren had to be in a bit of a tricky situation. Twin Shadows comes out here, and maybe that's all SK need. A little bit of a pick, a little bit of chip damage on the Splyce players, and they can go for this tower. Don't have to take it all down at once. You can just chip away piece by piece and suffocate Splyce out of this game.
I was actually a big fan of how Pirean used the Fog of War to just land that Q. Like, Humanoid walked up, he again didn't cleanse, and it forced his support to use Flash. And I think he needs to be a little bit more free with how he uses that cleanse, because right now he's put himself in two situations that ended in disaster for the side of Splyce. And it could have been much worse if it weren't for the use of Flash from Norskeren. So Humanoid needs to be a little bit more careful, show a little bit more respect to the playmaking power of this SK and pick potential.
Just coming over the 23-minute mark, 7 kills to 5 in favor of SK. They have a 3,000 gold lead, double Infernal now alongside the Mountain, and they continue just to chip away at this mid lane tower. It's down to about a quarter HP. SK not going to force it.
Okay, I just got a... It's an Infinity Edge on Rek'Sai.
Yeah, I was wondering what...
Wait, he actually went Infinity Edge?
Actually went Infinity
You know what?
Edge.
You know what? Go hard or go home, right? You are in
No.
Series-defining game for your team. You are the player that has been looked at as the best rookie, one of the best junglers in the league.
And you are trolling right now if you're building an Infinity Edge on Rek'Sai. That's not your job. You have, like, I guess he's worried because, oh, we have Morgana, not enough damage dealers. Guess I have to be the carry now? Like...
So I'm struggling, to be honest. And
if it works, it's genius.
I've had my fair share of crit Rek'Sai in solo queue. But when you're 1-1-1 at 24 minutes, I'm not sure I agree. It's also such an expensive item that you're really investing a lot into it. Okay. Now he's going for a Ruby Crystal, so he's not even going hard.
Okay. So I understand it's not a normal build path, guys.
Sure.
What does it give him?
Damage.
Cool.
Critical strike.
So that's all he's doing. He's trying to assassinate one player on the backline. He's trying to 1D Kobbe.
You could do that without an
trying to
Infinity
headshot
Edge.
Kobbe every time.
Yeah, so there's ultimately the difficulty is that if you just get instantly blown up, you're in trouble. And Rek'Sai does so much damage just with, you know, items that can give him HP that Rek'Sai should be fine. Now, one of the strengths of Rek'Sai is she actually has some of the highest AD ratios in the game. You're going to go on value.
Xerxe with the taunt onto Crownshot, but he cleanses the flashes away. Backline jumped on here by Xerxe, but already forced out. Great taunt by Dreams. Teleport coming in. There's the Glacial Fissure. Werlyb knocked back. He uses the Onslaught of Shadows defensively, but here's the hero's entrance. Fate's call comes out. Selfmade on the flank. Has the Infinity Edge. Remember, he could crit someone. Kobbe.
He's doing it.
Infinity Edge does all the work. Kobbe almost dies.
Ultim, you
there
coward.
we go. He void rushes in, but the Stand United is too much. Kobbe gets the kill.
He didn't land a single crit there. His E did a lot of damage.
That's not his fault.
His E did a lot of damage, admittedly, but...
You can't predict RNG, Vedius.
This build sucks.
This build really sucks.
Okay.
All right, so, thank you. So, not a crit, not a crit. Lots of damage. And if he'd ulted immediately, he might have actually gotten the kill. But then...
Norskeren gets called out. Okay.
So now they're going Baron.
Wait, they're doing Baron while Selfmade is dead.
What is
They're just
this
baiting out the
game?
team.
What is that?
Okay. Let's bring it back just to a little bit more serious here, guys.
So, we are very serious right now, Medic.
Yeah.
This build is something we really struggle to get our heads around.
I understand that.
Right? And so what we need to bring into context is the fact that SK were actually in an amazing spot. They had a very good early game, right? And they had all the tools to win this game. And now they run the risk because their jungler has decided to... Now, I'm not going to say that's going to lose them the game, right? Because...
It is a risk they didn't need to take.
It is a risk that they ultimately didn't need to take, and it is baffling.
And also, Duskblade's just better, right? So...
Anyway, rather than delve into that conversation, the bigger thing is that Kobbe now just picked up another kill. He's now sitting at 3 items, and SK are just kind of struggling to now break that tier 2 line. So now they're kind of posturing around the Baron and threatening this. And you already talked about how the Kalista can be very threatening. You're now looking for this pick if you're SK as you kind of dance around the Baron buff.
And Werlyb is here in this middle lane. I don't think SK are going to pull the trigger on the Baron too quickly. They've been a little tentative around it thus far, but there is another Infernal Drake coming up in a minute, and they still have complete control over this middle lane with some deep control wards inside this eastern quadrant of the jungle on Splyce's side.
However, it was 7 minutes ago that Vedius said they've done such a good job breaking down all these towers. They've done such a good job. They already left only tier 2s here, and still Splyce's 2 remaining tier 2s stand. They have stalled out this game. They have built up some of these items on their AD carry, on their mid laner. They have a very tanky Shen with the Warmogs, with the Sunfire Kate, and you wonder whether SK kind of missed their window in the early game to really accelerate this.
I don't think so. I don't think that they've suddenly, like, the game is over for them. They're still 2,500, 3,000 gold ahead. They have a Hecarim who's going to be stronger in the side lane now against the Shen. They have full vision control around, like, the river forward, and they're the ones still dictating the pace. It's just, the longer the game goes, arguably the harder it is, because you run the risk of getting into another one of these team fight situations where you just kind of look at this comp from... But actually, I think both sides actually have pretty solid team fight, but ultimately, okay, they started the Baron. This is risky, super, super, super risky, but look where Selfmade is. He's nowhere near.
Selfmade down towards that Infernal. There's Sjokz with the Stand United.
Just come back off.
Just push mid, take Infernal. It's actually free.
As a note, I have been informed by production that Selfmade 2 days ago tweeted, Infinity Edge is the only viable second item on Rek'Sai.
But he didn't build it in the earlier game.
Just saying, that's what he tweeted out. Now, mid lane tower goes down. Good call on that ender. SK can now pull down towards this Infernal Dragon. It would be their 3rd of the game. 24% bonus AD and AP.
And yet we're in a position now where Splyce do not want to give them the chance. I think Splyce are comfortable looking for a team fight. They have Kobbe where they want them. SK wanted too, though. Both of these teams, remember game 1 and game 2, how intense the team fights were, how they turned games around on a dime. Well, we're about to get another one of those.
Selfmade on the Infernal Dragon here. Crownshot there as well. Splyce maybe looking for the fight because they've split up SK. Werlyb has the flank. There's the Infernal. That's all the buffs going over to SK straight away. Sjokz has a few spears in his back. Werlyb caught out with the Scatter of the Week. Crownshot's in the pit. Werlyb has the possibility of an onslaught of shadows here, but SK just want to disengage. Crownshot can jump across the wall, remember, with the pierce if he needs to. Actually, Pirean's going to jump in. The base call comes out. SK want the fight. Splyce, the front line is Sjokz. Humanoid from the side. There's the Glacial Prison. Xerxe caught out by Werlyb. It's all on Kobbe. Watch the AD carries here. Kobbe steps forward into the hero's entrance, knocked up, and look at the damage coming out from SK. That Rune Ants from Crownshot's doing absolute work. Sjokz takes one. We have a hit of the Stunners game. As Kobbe's still on the front line, he gets one. Can Kobbe do it? He's still alive. He gets Selfmade. He gets Pirean. Somehow Kobbe managed to survive and takes down 2. And Pirean and Werlyb have to run for the wind.
SK get the dragon, but they lose the fight. It is Kobbe who stays alive, and now it's Sjokz hunting down the horse.
The taunt doesn't quite connect, but look at the healing coming out onto Sjokz with that Warmogs. Kobbe stayed around, condemns Werlyb back, and pins him in his place. Splyce win the fight.
So, that was pretty crazy. Let's have a look at how this side. SK could have gotten out, but instead they wanted the fight. They then decide to commit onto Xerxe. And at this point you think, okay, not the best start, but then Splyce all funnel into this choke point. At this point you think it's over. Hecarim ultimate into Dreams ultimate, but the Blast Cone actually separates the whole fight, which gives the freedom for Kobbe to then turn it around.
And it was actually a huge Scatter the Week from Humanoid that interrupted the damage coming through from Crownshot. Crownshot had the AoE damage coming in from the Runon's Hurricane, and he wasn't able to apply it onto the 3 members that got CC'd in the corridor. That was the moment that shifted the entire team fight and allowed Kobbe to pop off so hard.
Felt like it was SK's fight, but now there's only 1,000 gold between these two teams. SK did get the Infernal, remember, so they are in an okay position in terms of Dragons. If you are watching us from North America, the LCS Spring Playoffs is starting soon with FlyQuest versus Golden Guardians. You can watch that, the countdown now, over at twitch.tv/LCS. When we close out Splyce versus SK, the LCS is switching to twitch.tv/Riot Games, and the post-game lobby will move to twitch.tv/LEC. So if you want to stay tuned for that, go to twitch.tv/LEC.
I believe Golden Guardians and FlyQuest will be playing later on this evening.
That's what I said.
That's yes. Sorry, my apologies. But the point is, it's supposed to be an exciting series, just like this one is, as SK are still in a great position to bring us to a Game 5.
Two very evenly matched teams over in North America, two very evenly matched teams here, it seems, as
See,
well.
that was the point I was trying to get at.
I got there. I do it for you, Valée. We're a great team.
Thank you very
together.
much,
Now,
man.
Kobbe has gone from 225 to 525 now. 4 completed items with the GA. There's 4 on the side of Crownshot as well, and you have to feel these late-game teamfights are going, well, mid to late-game teamfights are going to be defined by the AD carry.
This is just a battle, ADC on ADC. They have equal itemization at the moment. It's Kalista versus Vayne, and if Kalista can actually kite around in these fights, you get the big Ren damage coming through, you can go up against it. But we just saw Kobbe absolutely outplay SK around that dragon, and oh, it's gearing up. We're going late with this one, and we're going big.
So, we talked earlier about armor. Ooh, we might not have time. Look at Werlyb, he's dead.
Werlyb, Hero's entrance comes out. He's not dead yet. Vedius Dreams comes in, has the taunt as well. Catches Xerxe, catches another. Selfmade looking for that flank position. Could get onto Humanoid. Norskeren takes a little bit of chip. Xerxe there with the Cataclysm as well, but he's just going to run his way out with the EQ combo. And Werlyb definitely not dead yet, as he has escaped down towards the bottom side.
He's split apart for
Kobbe! Next, Kobbe just going in onto Selfmade here. Jumping forward with the flash. Selfmade gets away. Norskeren with the Glacial Fissure though, catches out one. Xerxe there. Xerxe joining the fight as well as Kobbe. Continues to tumble forward. Continues to try and condemn SK to defeat, but can't quite land those final shots.
Kobbe saw the Infinity Edge Rex.
Xerxe's gonna catch Selfmade! Oh, he's not tanky enough. He goes golden, but all he's doing is stopping his death. Splyce get one. Crownshot knocked in, uses the cleanse, jumps forward as the AD carries going in. Humanoid, he's somehow he survives, and now Crownshot has to dance backwards. Use that martial cadence, come back away from the fight. SK have Werlyb, no onslaught of shadows yet, but Pirean has the slows. There's the binding onto Norskeren. Crownshot there, Xerxe can't quite land the stun, but puts down the Spirit's Refuge. He's going to be alive for the moment as he gets back away from the fight with Gargoyle Stoneplay. SK looking for the resets here. They've caught out one. Selfmade stood down for 20 seconds, but the Baron could be in their sights.
Ends up being a 1-for-1 in the end. Norskeren traded for Selfmade. The fact that the jungler's not there doesn't actually bother SK as they start this one off. Remember, they have the Rend on Crownshot, but it will be in vision. So SK gonna back away from that one. Both teams really need to reset. You can see Xerxe will have the opportunity to go back to base. And we return to a neutral state.
Yeah, SK have other ideas. First, they want to pick themselves up their second mountain of the game. You get that with a Kalista on your team. They need to play around Baron Nashor coming up next. That is going to be where they draw the line and try to burst that thing down, because now you look at it, and there's so many summoner spells. The Flash is missing on Crownshot, but not just him. Kobbe and Humanoid also are going to be quite vulnerable.
So this is where the fight kicked off towards where the dragon was. Werlyb forced to use his ultimate to get out of the pit, and then it just kind of devolves into chaos where kind of both teams are stuck in this choke point. Kobbe can't really approach the fight, Crownshot can't really approach the fight, so they can't really convert it into much. But then Kobbe notices that Selfmade is in the mid lane trying to get priority, so he just hard commits onto him, thinks he can find that kill, but if that tunnel wasn't there, it would have resulted in something. But then the taunt as well come from Vizicsacsi actually into the spell shield, means they can't get a kill onto Dreams either, but they do at least get the flash out from him, and then of course Vizicsacsi. Unfortunately, you should never shop while basing, and you definitely shouldn't base while in your own jungle.
Wait, that's what you usually should base.
Normally you should base behind your towers, Ender, somewhere safe.
That is true. That
not
is true.
when the enemy team just want to fight.
Well, Humanoid dodges away from the binding here. Werlyb is there, has the onslaught of shadows. It feels like the intensity of this game has just gone up a little bit, just a notch, just a tad, as Selfmade looks for a flank position here. Crownshot getting a lot of Ren stacks off. Norskeren down to half HP. Xerxe is going to have to use the taunt to get across the wall, and SK maybe looking for a bit of an engage, but Werlyb takes a chunk from those spheres. You can continue. Oh, Norskeren had to flash. Xerxe caught.
Just turns on this.
But he
can't
tank.
He taunts him up. knocked back. There's the Void Rush to dodge it out. The Glacial Fish comes out as well, but he's dead. And Hero's Entrance now gets into the backline. Xerxe with a great lockup onto Pirean, onto Werlyb. Crownshot, though, could still do some damage here. The Fate's Call pulls them back. Norskeren very low. You can see Humanoid ticking away on the Tormented Soil. Kobbe trying to get on towards that front line. Gets that shut down onto Pirean. Now he's on Crownshot. The Stand United. It's enough. Will it keep him alive? He gets away from the back of the fight, and Dreams goes down as well. It's a double kill for Kobbe, and Splyce come out on top.
Splyce absolutely dumpster that team fight. Now they're looking for more. Kobbe on the prowl. What a play from him. They single out Selfmade at the start, and from there it's easy, and it doesn't matter if SK have triple Infernal, double Mountain, it's still Splyce to get the Baron.
And this time we saw how squishy Selfmade was and how quickly he died. He took a tunnel into the enemy jungle, and he just walked straight into Vizicsacsi. The Black Shield wasn't in range, which meant that that was the prime opportunity for Splyce to turn and fight. And just keep your eyes on Selfmade in this game. Or in this play, he uses the tunnel over the wall, goes onto the Shen. Like, what? He's just asking to be engaged on. The Black Shield gets melted immediately, and then they kill him. And at this point, the rest of the fight is in the favor of Splyce.
Yeah, it's just a huge mistake from him. And Splyce, it's just time and time again, you see one player live with basically 0 HP. Norskeren right there, Humanoid also super chunked, but it's Kobbe who went virtually untouched in the team fight. And actually, great condemn there onto Werlyb, who's looking for the charge to burst the GA. They take control.
You just start to see maybe a little bit that veterancy from Splyce paying dividends for them. 17 playoff appearances on this roster compared to just the one from SK. 2 rookies on SK, of course, as well. Do want to give a little bit of credit to Humanoid, who's played a few of these last team fights really well on the Syndra after having a pretty weak early game in this matchup. And Splyce now, feels like it's one fight away from victory, one fight away from a matchup against Fnatic in round 2 of playoffs.
Yeah, just one team fight with this Baron buff on the side of SK, and you're gonna walk away with the victory. I have to point out Humanoid CS at the moment as well. He's up about 130 over Pirean, so he is pumping out the damage in these engagements. A 2,000 gold lead for him, just built up basically off of solo laning advantages, and it's a big reason why Splyce now find themselves with the gold lead.
Pirean waiting just around the corner, looking for those bindings, can't connect. Selfmade in position to burrow in. Has he been training well? Going to use the oracles to sweep out that ward, but immediately knows that Splyce are aware of his position. Twin Shadows used as well. SK just trying to delay as much as possible as this Baron buff slowly ticks away.
So we briefly talked about in the draft about this 4-1 composition that Splyce do have. You can see now with the Shen here, no teleport as well. It's actually very easy for Splyce to force a numbers advantage with the Baron buff as well. So it's something that SK have to constantly respect. And impressively, Vizicsacsi is actually forcing the Hecarim back. So we talked a little bit about how Werlyb should have the scaling advantage later on, but he's just so tanky at this point. And with the Baron buff and powered minions as well, it's just too difficult for Werlyb to really approach the wave and come out on top.
Yeah, the Baron buff is the ultimate equalizer when it comes to 1v1 matchups inside. Oh,
Crownshot straight into the GA. The Unleashed power is just too much damage. Dreams forced away as well. Pirean opened up on by Kobbe here. Dreams gets the Justice Punch in. Selfmade just way too late before he even joins the party. Will pop the Void Rush, but shut down onto Crownshot, shut down onto Dreams. SK's hopes in this game are being shut down by Splyce.
It is just Pirean and Werlyb left to defend. Now most of Splyce are relatively low at the moment, so I don't know if they can look for the end, but they surely look for the inhibitor. Chachi just went back to base and he has the TP to regroup.
He's going to use it. Werlyb and Pirean are the last line defense. You just said it, Ender, but Splyce, they have Fnatic set in their eyes. They want to make it to round 2. Let's see if SK can...
Werlyb gets onto the back line. He shuts down Humanoid, but he will go pop straight into the GA. Now there is a cannon minion here, so 20 seconds on the rest of SK. They'll take down Werlyb. It's all on Pirean. Dreams up in 7, but the Nexus towers have already taken damage.
And Kobbe has gone legendary with 10 kills. Splyce look to close.
Splyce, it looked like SK may have taken game 4, but Splyce come a-knocking. They sweep SK under the map, and they prove that they belong amongst the best teams in the LEC.
After a good regular season, Splyce come into playoffs as heavy favorites, and while game 1 definitely showcased some mistakes, they cleaned things up. And they were able to get some very impressive in the late game, in the final game that mattered the most.
Yeah, the team fights early on in the series were impressive to watch from them. That game 3, they showed a completely different style. Yes. It was impressive from them. The 1-3-1 comp, they show that it's not just the one-dimensional play style. They have other tricks up their sleeve, and now going into round 2, after 3-1 victory, looking pretty solid.
well. And it was something that you mentioned as well in the game, and that the armor items really did come into fruition later on into the game. Having that front line for Kobbe to play around just kind of unleashed the beast. You know, they soaked up so much damage. You said so many members got so low health, and just kind of showcased that SK's composition could only do so much. And unfortunately, they just couldn't get through that front line, which then allowed Kobbe to clean up.
What I think I really like from Splyce in this series is that little bit of versatility that they showed in Game 3 as well, playing completely through the early game, shoring up that mid game that has been a weakness from them. It feels like they've used the couple of weeks we've had from the end of the split to now to really work on their weaknesses and become a stronger, cohesive unit.
They certainly have, and on the other side of things, SK, it's a team that, again, not everyone expected to be making playoffs in their first split back in Europe, and they played admirably. Look, they contested, they won game 1, they made it here to the playoffs, and they challenged Splyce. That's not something that every team could say. And honestly, SK look very good, and I'm very excited to see them return in summer.
I think you can pick out every single player on that team and look at the performance they had today that was really good. Like, they didn't always all perform well in the same game, but Dreams in game 1 had a really stellar performance. Even in this game, had some incredibly good taunts. We saw Pirean have some good plays. Crownshot was consistent. Werlyb on the Hecarim was giving us a little bit of extra spiciness in that top lane. And then Selfmade. I mean, we've said so much about Selfmade across the course of the split, but I think he is gearing up to be one of the best junglers in the LEC in the future.
I think there's evidence to show that there's definitely room for growth with Selfmade, but for his inaugural split, he's definitely been a very impressive and impactful player, and I look forward to seeing what he can bring in the future, along with many other SK players. With the likes of Sjokz and Misfits, expectations were definitely against them, and you guys already talked about it, so I'm curious and excited to see how they do next split. But for now, we've got to focus in on Splyce as they join the ranks of Fnatic, Origin, and G2 in that round 2. And what they will be fighting Fnatic for is a spot in Rotterdam and a spot at the finals. And that is definitely a big challenge to overcome, given Fnatic's performance over not only the second half of the regular season, but the absolute dismantling of Vitality yesterday.
It definitely will be. Just in case people don't understand our playoff format at home, the winner of Fnatic versus Splyce will play up against the loser of Origin versus G2. And then the winner of Origin G2 will play the winner of the match between the loser and the winner.
Well, they'll go on to the
final. They go into the semi-final match, and then they all go on to the final in the end. So the match on Saturday in Rotterdam matters more than ever. It's not just the third place decider, it's a decider of who gets into the final.
Yep.
If you want to vote for your key player of the series, you need to head on over to @LOL Esports on Twitter. We've narrowed it down to Sjokz, Kobbe, and Norskeren. That's a spicy one. I mean, Kobbe maintained his undefeated record on Vayne. He's never lost on that champion.
I think one of those, this is always a really hard one where realistically you wish you could vote for all 5 players, because every single game there was I think we can give a lot of credit to Xerxe for like the first 3 games, for example, right? But his impacts in game 4 and maybe, I think his impact in game 4 just wasn't there, right? And so I think different members showed up at different times. But for me, ultimately, Kobbe was the most consistent of all of them throughout the series. And I think that he is definitely worthy of praise of helping Splyce get to round 2.
I think I can agree with that. Over in the LCS, the Spring Playoffs is about to start with, you guessed it, FlyQuest versus Golden Guardians. You can check out that countdown right here at twitch.tv/Riot Games. Here from Berlin, we're actually going to get ready for our post-game lobby, where we'll be joined by Xerxe and Norskeren to discuss today's series and more. If you want to catch all of that, you should change to twitch.tv/LEC. If you're watching on YouTube, though, you can stay right where you are, because we'll be right back after a break.